Hello, everyone. I'm your storyteller. Tonight, I will read a story that maybe one of you has experienced, and I am here to help you today. I know you're using this video to help you sleep. So before we begin, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Tell me in the comments where you're from and what time you're watching. Lay back comfortably, relax, and let's begin. Story 1. Emma sat in the corner of a small cafe in downtown Boston. Her eyes were fixed on her phone screen, swiping left and right on a newly downloaded dating app. It was a rainy Friday, and the cafe smelled of freshly brewed coffee. Emma had been single for 6 months after her 5-year relationship ended unexpectedly. "It seems like there's no one normal on this app," she muttered, sipping her latte. At 29, Emma was a graphic designer with shoulder-length blonde hair and a smile that could light up a room. Her job offered flexibility, but her loneliness grew each night. She had decided to try online dating after hearing her friends' success stories. Just as she was about to give up, a profile caught her eye. Daniel Carter, 32, entrepreneur. Hobbies: hiking, cooking, and art. His profile photo showed a tall man with a chiseled jawline and piercing blue eyes that exuded mystery. Emma was intrigued. She swiped right. Almost immediately, her phone vibrated with a notification. "It's a match." Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Daniel was charming, witty, and attentive. Within days, they were sharing personal stories. "So, what's your favorite restaurant in Boston?" Daniel asked in one of his messages. Emma replied enthusiastically, "There's this little spot near Charles River. They have the best seafood pasta." Daniel responded, "How about we go there Saturday night?" Emma hesitated. She had never met anyone from a dating app before, but Daniel felt different. She agreed. Saturday night arrived, and Emma stood outside the restaurant in a simple black dress. The rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh with the scent of wet asphalt. Daniel arrived right on time. He looked even more handsome in person. His smile was warm, but there was something in his eyes, something she couldn't quite place. Dinner went perfectly. They laughed, shared stories, and time seemed to stand still. But when Daniel spoke about his family, his tone turned odd. He avoided specifics and only mentioned losing them in an accident years ago. As they parted ways, Daniel said, "I feel like I've known you forever, Emma." She smiled, but deep inside, a tiny unease began to grow. Over the next few weeks, Emma and Daniel saw each other often, but soon Daniel's behavior became peculiar. He started sending messages at 3 a.m., saying things like, "I feel like we're destined to be together forever," or "I can't stop thinking about you. I'm always watching over you." Emma felt unsettled, but she tried to brush it off, thinking he was just overly enthusiastic. One evening, when she returned home from work, she noticed something that made her heart race. On her coffee table was a bouquet of red roses, flowers she hadn't bought. "Who got into my apartment?" she whispered, panic creeping in. She called Daniel. His voice was calm. "I just wanted to make you feel special," he said. Emma's skin crawled. How did he know her apartment code? The following night, Emma found an anonymous message written on the steamed-up bathroom mirror after her shower. "I'm always here." She couldn't sleep. Fear gripped her as she decided to investigate Daniel. She reached out to a journalist friend for help. Within hours, her friend came back with shocking information. Daniel was not an entrepreneur. He had been fired years ago for threatening a female colleague. Even worse, there were multiple reports of stalking tied to his name. That night, Emma locked all her doors and windows, but around 2 a.m., she heard footsteps in her apartment corridor. The lights flickered, and a loud knock echoed through her door. "Emma, I know you're in there. Open the door." Daniel's voice growled, low and threatening. Emma called the police while hiding in her closet. Her heart pounded as the door rattled violently under his attempts to break in. The police arrived just in time. They arrested Daniel, but his face showed no remorse. He simply smiled coldly and whispered to Emma, "We'll meet again." Emma moved to a new city, determined to start fresh, but every night she double-checked her locks and windows before bed. Daniel might have been behind bars, but his shadow lingered in her mind. Story 2. Laura sat on her couch, scrolling through her phone. The faint hum of the city outside her Chicago apartment was her only company. At 28, she had worked tirelessly to build her career as a data analyst. But her personal life, that was another story. She had recently signed up for a popular dating app after being single for 2 years. It wasn't something she planned to take seriously, but the nights felt lonelier lately, and a little excitement wouldn't hurt. She swiped past profiles of smiling faces and witty bios until one caught her eye. Ethan Reynolds, 30, photographer. Hobbies: traveling, reading, and exploring haunted places. The last detail made her chuckle. "Haunted places? That's unique," she muttered. Ethan's profile was simple, but captivating. His dark hair and easy smile gave him a warm yet mysterious vibe. She swiped right. It's a match. Their conversation started casually, discussing favorite movies and books. Ethan had a way of making even mundane topics feel exciting. So, what's the scariest place you've ever explored? Laura typed, curious about his unusual hobby. Ethan replied almost instantly. There's an abandoned hospital near Chicago. People say it's haunted. Want to see it someday? Laura hesitated but decided to keep the mood light. Maybe, if you promise to protect me from the ghosts. Their chats became a nightly routine. Within days, Ethan suggested meeting in person. How about coffee this Friday? He asked. Laura agreed, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. Friday evening, Laura arrived at a cozy cafe in Lincoln Park. Ethan was already there, sitting at a corner table with a book. He looked up, smiled, and waved her over. Laura? He asked, standing to greet her. In the flesh, she replied, shaking his hand. Ethan was charming in person. They talked for hours, and Laura felt at ease. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, when his gaze lingered too long, or his smile felt just a bit too forced. As they parted, Ethan said, This was great. Let's do it again soon. Laura nodded, but that faint unease stayed with her as she walked home. Over the next few weeks, they met several times. Ethan seemed attentive and thoughtful, but Laura began noticing strange things. One night, after a late dinner, she returned to her apartment to find her front door slightly ajar. She froze, her heart racing. Did I forget to lock it? She whispered to herself. Inside, nothing seemed out of place, but the unease lingered. The next morning, she found a note slipped under her door. It read, You looked beautiful last night. She confronted Ethan, who laughed it off. It's not from me, maybe a secret admirer? The explanation didn't sit right with her. Determined to get answers, Laura started digging into Ethan's background. She found his photography website, but something felt off. Most of his clients were women, and their testimonials were eerily similar. One testimonial read, Ethan made me feel seen like no one else could. He's unforgettable. Another, I've never felt so alive and so scared. Laura's instinct screamed that something was wrong. She decided to visit the abandoned hospital Ethan had mentioned, hoping to find clues. The building loomed in the moonlight, its windows shattered and walls covered in graffiti. Inside, the air was cold and every sound echoed ominously. She found a room with photographs pinned to the walls. Women's faces stared back at her, some smiling, some crying. And there, in the corner, was a picture of her from their first date. Before she could process what she was seeing, she heard footsteps. Turning, she saw Ethan standing in the doorway, his face a mix of anger and amusement. You weren't supposed to find this, he said, stepping closer. What is this, Ethan? Who are you? Laura demanded, backing away. He smirked. I capture emotions, Laura. Fear is the purest one. Laura grabbed a rusted pipe from the floor and swung it as Ethan lunged at her. She missed, but the sound distracted him long enough for her to run. She darted through the dark halls, his footsteps echoing behind her. Just as he grabbed her arm, she broke free and ran outside. A passing car stopped, and the driver called the police. Ethan disappeared before the police arrived. The photos in the hospital were gone when they searched the building. Laura moved to a new apartment and changed her number, but the memories haunted her. She would often glance over her shoulder, feeling as if someone was watching, and sometimes she'd find a single photograph slipped under her door. Story 3. Megan unlocked the door to her small studio apartment in Brooklyn. The faint smell of coffee from the shop downstairs wafted in as she dropped her bag on the floor. It had been a long day at the art school where she taught. At 27, Megan loved her job. She thrived in the colorful chaos of young creativity, but when the workday ended, so did the energy. Her evenings were quiet, almost too quiet. Megan had been single for almost 3 years. Her last relationship ended with little drama, but left her feeling hesitant about trying again. After encouragement from her best friend, she finally downloaded Spark, a popular dating app. She scrolled through profiles with mild interest until one stood out. Josh Taylor, 29, architect. Loves hiking, classic literature, and late-night conversations. His photos were casual yet polished. In one, he leaned against a brick wall, smiling under the warm glow of a street lamp. Not bad, she whispered, swiping right. Within minutes, it's a match. Their first conversation felt effortless. Josh was funny and engaging. They shared a love for reading and both dreamed of traveling to Greece someday. So, what brought you to Spark? Megan asked. Josh replied, honestly, just looking to meet someone real. The way he phrased things made Megan smile. She felt like she could trust him, even though they'd just met. After days of chatting, Josh suggested they meet for dinner. There's a cozy Italian place near 5th Street, he wrote. They make the best ravioli in town. Megan hesitated, but decided to take the leap. Sure, let's do it. Friday night came quickly. Megan arrived early at the restaurant. The dim lighting and soft music created a warm ambiance. She wore a simple black dress and her favorite silver earrings. Josh walked in a few minutes later. He was taller than she expected, with an easy smile that put her at ease. Hey, Megan, he asked, approaching her table. That's me, she said, standing to shake his hand. Dinner was pleasant. Josh was charming and attentive, but there were odd moments too. He rarely talked about his family, brushing off questions with vague answers. You don't talk much about yourself, Megan teased. Josh smiled. I prefer hearing about you. Despite the subtle unease, Megan left the dinner feeling hopeful. The next day, Megan sent Josh a casual message. Last night was great. Let's do it again soon. Hours passed with no response. She sent another text in the evening, but it went unanswered. By the following morning, Josh's profile had disappeared from Spark. Confused, Megan tried to look him up on social media. She found a Facebook page, but it hadn't been updated in years. The only photo was of a younger Josh, standing in front of a cabin in the woods. Her heart sank. Was she ghosted? Or was something else going on? Determined to get answers, Megan reached out to her tech-savvy friend, Ethan. Can you help me find someone? She asked. Ethan agreed, running a reverse image search on Josh's photo. What he found made Megan's blood run cold. Josh Taylor isn't who he says he is, Ethan said. This guy's image has been used on fake profiles before. Megan felt sick. She had let a complete stranger into her life. Desperate for closure, she returned to the restaurant where they had their date. She asked the manager if he remembered Josh. That guy? The manager said, frowning. He paid in cash. Didn't seem weird at the time, but something about him felt off. Megan's search led her to the cabin from Josh's Facebook photo. It was a 2-hour drive upstate, deep in the woods. The air was cold and quiet as she approached the property. The cabin looked abandoned, with broken windows and a door hanging slightly ajar. Inside, she found scattered papers and old photographs. On one wall was a collage of pictures, dozens of women's faces, including her own. Suddenly, Megan heard the crunch of footsteps behind her. She spun around, heart racing. Looking for me? A familiar voice said. Josh stood in the doorway, his smile now twisted into something sinister. Josh stepped closer, his presence suffocating. Why are you here, Megan? He asked, his tone mocking. Megan backed away, her eyes darting for an exit. I needed answers. Josh laughed, low and menacing. You shouldn't have come. Adrenaline took over. Megan grabbed a heavy bookend from a nearby shelf and threw it at him. It gave her just enough time to run. She sprinted through the woods, branches scratching her arms. Behind her, Josh's footsteps pounded closer. Just as he reached for her, Megan stumbled onto a road. A passing truck screeched to a halt. Help me, she screamed. The driver jumped out and Josh disappeared into the trees. The police searched the cabin but found no trace of Josh or the photos. Megan moved to a new apartment, but the fear lingered. Months later, she received a package with no return address. Inside was a single photo of her at the restaurant. Taken from outside the window, Josh was still out there, and that's my story for tonight. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.